Welcome back to another episode of the Triple Coverage Podcast. We are on season 2, episode 9. And tonight, I'm flying solo. Mitchell had a last minute thing that he had come up and couldn't make it. Cody's got something going on with work tonight, so he's not able to make it. So you're just going to have me here on the show tonight. But regardless if it's just me or all three of us are here, we have a loaded show tonight. We've got a lot of things to talk about. And so I'm excited to get into it. Um, I want to start off by a new NCAA ruling that just came down, I think, 2 days ago. The NCAA has announced that they are reducing the transfer portal window to just one window every year, and it will be January 2nd through the 16th every season. So that's one window for the next 15 days. As of right now, there's speculation that the Big Ten is probably going to try to appeal that. I think the Big Ten wants two portal windows. The SEC only wanted one. As of right now, the NCAA has ruled that there's only going to be one transfer portal window. I think that's going to tremendously help rosters across college football to where you're not constantly having to, uh, worry about your roster. And at that point in the season, January 2nd to the 16th, you kind of know what you have at that point, and you kind of know what you need to go get in the portal. So I think it's going to help a lot. The players, I don't really know how the players feel about it. If the one portal window or the two portal windows, but there's not going to be any more room for transfer after spring practice, basically. So if you're going to transfer, you better transfer after the season's over on January 2nd to the 16th. So it'll be exciting to see how that plays out. Like I said, I think it's going to benefit college football. It's going to bring a little bit more stability to the game. I think there's still some legislation in our government that's probably going to be coming down to kind of help regulate the sport a little bit. But I think this, uh, you know, the NCAA doesn't do a lot of things right, but I think this was a smart decision to create only one transfer portal window. I think it's going to, like I said, bring a little bit more stability. It's going to help coaches be able to maintain and manage rosters a little bit better, and just kind of reduce the amount of stress on them when it comes to the recruiting process. Um, so there's that. The next thing I want to talk about is the University of North Carolina situation. And if you're not aware of what's going on at the University of North Carolina right now, um, it's very messy. Um, Bill Belichick, it was weird. Yesterday, the University of North Carolina had posted something on their social media page saying that, we are still 100% behind Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is still 100% committed to UNC, and they even had Bill Belichick himself even released some kind of a statement saying that he was completely committed to the program and what they were building there. And then late last night, early this morning, I get on X, and it's being now widely reported that Bill Belichick has been meeting with UNC brass about opting out of his contract, seeking an opt out, seeking a buyout, rather. And he's willing to um, even take a pay cut to have himself bought out if he can find what they're calling a soft landing, either on another team's staff or somewhere in media. And I don't know if any of our listeners were listening to the preseason shows that we had, but I said when we talked about the ACC preview that this UNC team was going to be a disaster. That this was going to be a messy team. I still think I picked them to go like 6-6, but I think I gave him a little bit too much credit. Bill Belichick is way past his prime. I think now it's starting to be evident that maybe Tom Brady was the one that carried those teams and not Bill Belichick. And then his whole girlfriend situation has become way too much of a distraction. And apparently, even UNC like assistant coaches and coordinators are already reaching out to other teams, seeing if there's an available spot for them um, you know, or looking for spots on playoff contenders so they can join the team. Apparently, there might be some rule about not being able to hire, you know, within a season, but I think like technically during the postseason you can add somebody. I don't know, but there's been some reporting that assistant coaches are looking to leave, looking for spots on other teams. That over the last 2 weeks, Belichick has been what they say is distant. They haven't been able to get in contact with him. It's just an absolute disaster. And, I think UNC has the resources to be a very good team, to be at least an ACC contender. I mean, they've got the Jordan brand funds a lot of the athletic department, but I think they've got to move away, and I think UNC is going to learn from this situation to stop with the old school coach mentality. They went to Mac Brown. Mac Brown, longtime head football. He's a Hall of Fame level coach, but I think Mac Brown, when they hired him, was kind of way past his prime. Kind of wasn't ready to jump into the new era of college football. He had been out of coaching for like more than a decade, I think, and hadn't really gotten his feet wet with the new era of college football. So they throw him in there because of his history at UNC, because of him being a Hall of Fame head football coach. And there was a little bit of momentum just because of the nostalgia of Mac Brown. But then you could quickly see things started to get ugly really fast. Nobody wanted to go play there. Nobody wanted to play for an old school coach that just not able to, and not willing to adapt to the new era of college football. And then, so they fire Mac Brown. Okay. You would think as a UNC fan, if you're a UNC fan, okay, now that we fired Mac Brown, now there's an opportunity for us to maybe go younger, maybe go a different direction. But no, they go and hire Bill Belichick, who's either the same age, maybe even older than Mac Brown, in his 70s, way past his prime. I think UNC at this point has got to go get a young head coach, like no matter what. Even if you go get a guy that's really got no coaching experience, you've got to go get somebody young. You cannot go back to the well of these old school, old aged head coaches that have been so far removed from the new era of college football. They've got to get with the times. And like I said, I think UNC has the resources to be good, to get into the NIL space, to get into the I mean, they had, I think, 60 or 70 transfer portal acquisitions this past offseason. I think maybe the most in the country. They had the most transfer. Their entire roster was transfer portal guys. So they can get guys to go there and to play there. They just got to have a new mentality. They've got to have a young, fresh head coach that can rejuvenate the program, because right now it's a disaster. And I think they're going to have another mass exodus by season's end. As soon as that portal opens, I think you're going to see a lot of players transferring out, because, listen, that UNC team, I've watched a few games of them this year. I haven't watched all their games. I watched the opener. I watched a little bit of the Clemson game, and I watched another game that they played. That team is really bad. I mean, they are horrible. And Bill Belichick had even went on ESPN on game day this past Saturday before they played Clemson, and they were interviewing him. He was bantering back and forth with Nick Saban, and he was talking about how it's gonna be a process, and how Bill Belichick was willing to be patient with this process. It's going to take a few years to get UNC to where he wanted it to be. But as we can see, he's not willing to be patient. He's out after one season. He's only 5 games in, and he's already ready to be done, already ready to walk away from the football team. And I saw this comparison on social media. I think it's a super accurate comparison. Bill Belichick is very similar to Urban Meyer when he went to the Jaguars. Had no experience at that level of college football. Bill Belichick had really no experience at the college level. Urban Meyer had no experience at the NFL level. Was supremely overhyped. Both of them were supremely overhyped when they took those jobs. took over struggling football teams, and then both had some controversy with younger females, and then both quit on their team before they got through a full season. So maybe we should learn from that and not try to go after coaches that have no experience in that space. Just because they're a legend doesn't necessarily mean they're right fit. But we spent a little bit too much time on UNC. But I also want to take a moment to look at some of the conference standings nationwide. Let's look at the ACC. The ACC right now, I never in a million years would have thought that this is what the ACC almost halfway through the season would look like. You've got Virginia, number 1 in the conference, 5-1 overall, 3-0 in the conference. They lost to NC State, but that was a non-conference game, which I don't know why the ACC does that. I feel like there's at least one game every year between two ACC teams that's a non-conference game for some reason. But Virginia's first place in the conference. Then you've got Duke, also tied for first place, 3-0 in the conference, 4-2 overall. Both of their losses were non-con losses. Illinois and Tulane, I believe. Then you've got Georgia Tech, 5-0, 2-0 in the conference at third. Then you've got Miami. They're 5-0. They've only played one conference game so far. They're 1-0. So, what an interesting top 3 in the ACC. It's going to look drastically different by the end of the season, but I never would have thought that those 3 teams would be at the top of the ACC right now. You've got your traditional ACC powerhouses. Florida State is 3-2 on the season, 0-2 in the ACC, and are second to last in the conference. You've got Clemson, 1-2 in the conference, 2-3 overall. They are 14th, I think. They're way down there. Virginia Tech, they've struggled for a few years now. It's really odd. And like I said, it's going to look different by the end of the year, but 5-6 games into the season, the ACC looks interesting. Let's look at the Big 12 standings. You've got BYU at number 1 in the conference, which they had a really good start to last season as well. I thought they were going to take a huge step back because of losing Retzlaff, and I thought last year was kind of an anomaly, and they had Bo Bachmeier or Bear Bachmeier, whatever his name is, stepping in, true freshman quarterback, but he's looked good, and they're 5-0, and we're actually going to be picking one of their games today. 2-0 in the conference. I mean, hats off to Kalani Sitake. He has built a consistent program there at BYU, when a couple years ago it looked like he was probably going to get fired. And ever since then, he's really stepped up, and that program has really taken a step forward. And it seems like they're going to be a perennial Big 12 contender every year. Then you've got Texas Tech at number 2 in the conference. Well, actually tied for first. Both BYU and Texas Tech are 5-0, 2-0 in the conference. And this Texas Tech team looks legit. I mean, Texas Tech, there's been a few times in the last couple of years where they've gotten off to hot starts and people start talking about them, and then they just blow it. And they start losing games they shouldn't, or they get in a big game and they get blown out. But this Texas Tech team is different. I watched them play against Utah. That's a different team. And then even last week against Houston. Now, Houston, I still think they've got a few years to go, but that's not a pushover of a team, and they're just dominating teams on both sides of the football. That's a legitimate team. And now that they're becoming big spenders in the NIL space, or they've become one of the biggest NIL spenders in the country. I think they're number 1 in next year's class and how much money they're spending. Texas Tech. I mean, watch out for the boys in Lubbock. And then Arizona State, 2-0 in the conference, 4-1 overall. There's literally a 4-way tie for first place. You got Cincinnati, 2-0 in the conference, 4-1 overall. Just not teams that I think any of us expected to be leading the Big 12 once Oklahoma and Texas left. I thought it would be teams like Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, the Utah. But again, just like the ACC and the Big 12, it's these teams that we didn't expect to be the ones running the conference. You still got Iowa State's up there, Baylor's up there surprisingly, and Kansas State is having an abysmal year. We don't have time to talk about it today, but the Ireland curse is a real thing. I mean, we saw it last year with Florida State. We saw it a couple of years ago with Nebraska. The team that loses in Ireland ends up having an abysmal year. And it's happened at least 3 times now. Kansas State, I mean, I had them winning the Big 12, being in my playoff, and they're 1-2 in the conference. They're 2-4 this season, just having an awful year. Now let's go to the Big 10. In the Big 10, again, more surprises. You got Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, and Michigan in a 4-way tie for first place. Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, all 5-0, all 2-0 in the Big 10. Indiana. Now, we saw Indiana break out last season, but and we thought, okay, maybe, or at least a lot of people thought maybe that was just a one-year fluke. Maybe they just had all the right pieces at the right time, and they just had it was just kind of a fluky one-hit wonder type season. But Indiana's here to stay, guys. Curt Cignetti, like, I love Curt Cignetti. He's one of my favorite coaches in college football. He's just got this, like, he's got a certain aura about him that he goes into every game thinking, dude, I'm better than you, and I know that I'm better than you, and you're not going to outwork me. I just love that, and he just looks like the most stereotypical, like, dad, and yet he's a great football coach. So I'm a huge fan of Curt Cignetti, even though he dogs on the SEC. Whatever, that's fine. I'm still a huge fan of Curt Cignetti. Ohio State, that's not a surprise. Oregon, that's not a surprise. Michigan, that's not a surprise. So Big Ten is not as much of a surprise, other than Penn State. And we're going to talk about Penn State when we recap last week's games. Penn State's 0-2 in the Big Ten, 3-2 overall. Penn State has yet to win a game against a Power 4 team so far. And like I said, we're going to talk about them in a second, but James Franklin, time to have a real discussion about James Franklin as continuing to be the head football coach of Penn State. And then let's go to the final Power 4 conference, the SEC. I mean, who would have thought that Ole Miss would be number 1 in the SEC right now? Myself included, a lot of people thought Ole Miss was going to take a step back this season, was not going to be as good. But yet here they are. They're 3-0 in the SEC, 5-0 overall. Trinidad Chambliss is like the spark plug that they needed. This team might be better than last year's Ole Miss team, and I'm scared to play them. Even though we're hosting them this year, I'm scared to play those guys. That's a good football team. And Lane Kiffin has come a long way in the last couple of years. He's matured a lot. He's grown up a lot. He's a different guy. I mean, he's still Lane. I mean, he's still quirky. His personality hasn't changed, but he's more mature. And a mature Lane Kiffin is a scary Lane Kiffin. You got Texas A&M 5-0, 2-0 in the conference. I thought there would be a decent team, but I didn't think they'd be leading the conference. And again, this is all going to change in 5-6 weeks when we get to the end of the season. But, Alabama, that's not really much of a shocker. Missouri, 5-0, 1-0 in the SEC, and those two teams are about to play each other, Bama and Missouri, this week. Just a lot. And then Texas, we're going to talk about Texas too. What an absolute flop of a season they're having. Texas. I mean, the media loved Texas. The media, that was their darling. That was the go ahead and crown Texas national champions right now before we had even played a snap. Go ahead and crown Arch Manning as the greatest college quarterback we've ever seen before he's even played a snap of football. And I think what we learn from this is that I don't want to say that preseason AP polls are pointless, because I don't think they are necessarily pointless. But I think what it goes to show us is that sometimes we need to just let things play out. And sometimes just because you're a preseason number 1 or preseason top 5 doesn't guarantee you're going to be a good team. And sometimes we need to just step away from the media hype and just let the dudes play a snap of football. And I want to segue that into Texas, Penn State, Clemson. 3 of the preseason AP top 4 teams are all unranked at the moment. 3 of the top 4 preseason AP top 4 are all unranked. Texas has gone down now as the fastest team in college football history, the quickest team ever to go from preseason number 1 to unranked. Took them 5 weeks. It's never been done quicker than that. Penn State was preseason number 2, preseason number 3. They're unranked. Both Texas and Penn State have not won a Power 4 game yet. They're both 0-2 against Power 4 opponents. You got Clemson, who, I mean, we all see the disaster of a season they're having. They've lost 3 games to this point, and they haven't looked good. I mean, they looked good against UNC because UNC is such a bad team. But I think what we're learning is that, again, I'm not in the camp of those that say preseason AP polls are pointless, because we have to have some point of reference for how do we know what's a quality win, what counts as a ranked. When we get to the end of the season, we have to have some metric as to what was a quality win, what was not a quality win. So I don't think it's pointless. But what I think it shows us is that maybe we shouldn't put so much stock in it, especially the media, where whoever the preseason number 1 overall team is, the media just wants to go ahead and crown them champion. Let's not even play the season. Maybe we should just let the guys play some football. So that's what I wanted to talk about there. Let's recap some games from last week. We're not going to go over every game because we're already 22 minutes into the show. We had Cincinnati, Iowa State. I was the only one on this panel that picked Cincinnati. Look, I don't like Scott Satterfield, but I've been impressed with what he's done with this team this year. I think this is probably the best coaching job Satterfield's done. I mean, he was unimpressive at Louisville. I didn't think he was a very good coach there, and I've been very critical of him. But hey, give them credit. Cincinnati's playing good football this year. They beat a good Iowa State team, and as I just mentioned, Cincinnati is tied for first place in the Big 12. That's a good football team. Let's talk about Texas, Florida. What a disaster it's been for Texas. I mean, we just talked about them, but what a disaster it's been for Texas this season. I mean, the preseason favorite to win the national championship. Preseason Arch Manning is going to be, he's guaranteed to be the Heisman Trophy winner, guaranteed to be like the greatest quarterback ever, the way they were talking about him, the way the media was just salivating over him. And I said preseason on this show that I think that the pressure on him was unfair. I mean, I kind of sympathize with Arch Manning because of the unfair and unrealistic amount of pressure that's been put on him. And he has been an absolute bust. And I think it's laughable now that the media is now saying and claiming that Arch Manning is like the first ever college football bust of a quarterback. That's just laughable. Whoever wrote that has never watched college football before this season, because Arch Manning is far from the first ever bust. Flashbacks to Tate Martell, lots of other guys that have been busts. But I think what it is now the media has shifted from Texas is our team, the team the media wants to win, and Arch Manning is our guy. Now it's shifted to, let's all feel bad for Texas. Let's all feel bad for Arch Manning. It's like the media can't let go of Texas. They still want to push Texas, but now they've switched it to where they were the favorite. There's no way they're not winning the national championship. Now it's, oh, poor Texas. They have the first ever bust in college football. No, this happens all the time, and it happens a lot because media and talking heads put so much pressure on a kid that once again had not started a game, had not played a snap of football yet. And we're already crowning him national champions, already crowning him the Heisman Trophy winner, and he's going to have one of the greatest seasons in history. He hadn't done anything yet. The few games he started last season, he started against what? UL Monroe? Congratulations. Who cares? He hadn't done anything of note last season. And now I think we're figuring out why they would not bench Quinn Ewers last season when he was struggling. Because I think Sark has been seeing what we're all seeing now. And listen, I have no ill will towards Arch Manning. I wish him the best, and I hope he figures it out. I hope he figures it out somewhere else. I hope he transfers somewhere else that I don't despise and figures it out there. But the Texas hype train has got to stop. The media loves this Texas team, even when they're not good. And this Texas team is not good. As I mentioned, they have yet to win a Power 4 game. And this Florida team, look, they've got a great defense, but that offense has not been good all year. And Florida was marching up and down the field on them. And I know he was in the swamp, but this Florida team won the game out of desperation. Billy Napier had to win the game because they were 1-3. You lost to a 1-3 Florida team. That's just not good. And I think it's time to start having the conversation that Steve Sarkisian maybe is not the elite head coach that he's been portrayed to be. I saw this graphic and I saved it on my phone. I thought it was very interesting. Let's give a resume comparison. Steve Sarkisian, through his first 60 games at Texas, has a 41-19 record, has only 2 top 10 wins, has gone through 3 starting quarterbacks, and has only had 1 number 1 recruiting class. I'm going to give a resume of another coach that a lot of people viewed as overrated, flop, bust. I'm going to give you, before I give you his name, I'm going to give you his resume. So the first 60 games at his respective school was 39-21, 5 top 10 wins with 5 different starting quarterbacks, and also had 1 number 1 recruiting class. That coach is Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo Fisher has almost an identical record in the first 60 games at Texas A&M than Steve Sarkisian does at Texas, and Texas has had a lot more resources than A&M has during Jimbo Fisher's time. You know, Jimbo Fisher, they had that number 1 recruiting class that they paid a lot of money for, the highest paid recruiting class ever. Well, Texas has done the same thing. Texas has outspent that recruiting class. 41-19 to 39-21, that's a 2-game difference. Jimbo Fisher has 3 more top 10 wins than Sarkisian does in that same span. He's gone through 2 more starting quarterbacks. He had to go through 2 more starting quarterbacks than Sarkisian has had to. Same amount of recruiting classes. I think it's time to start having a conversation that Steve Sarkisian may not be who we think he is. When has Texas won a big game? I mean, they've been hyped through the moon the last 3 seasons. When have they won a big game? When have they won an elite top 10 matchup? When have they won? They haven't won an SEC title. They lost to Georgia last year, which one of the worst teams under Kirby Smart. Maybe not the worst team, but one of the worst rosters and teams overall that Georgia's had. And they lost to us twice. And they really could do nothing against us in both of those games. Their offense was not good, and Sarkisian's supposed to be this offensive genius. But when's the last time they won anything of significance? They made the playoff. I think they barely beat Arizona State, and then they lost in the next round. When has Texas won anything of significance? And yet they keep getting highly touted because of Steve Sarkisian in these recruiting classes. It's time to start having that conversation. Steve Sarkisian, until proven otherwise, is Jimbo Fisher 2.0. He's the same guy. Literally 2 wins better than Jimbo Fisher in the same time span, and 3 less top 10 wins than Jimbo Fisher in that time span. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Let's recap a few other games. And a big win for Florida. I mean, I hate giving Florida credit, but big win for them. I think I was talking to my buddy who's a huge Florida fan, it's almost a bad thing that they won that game because now Billy Napier is going to stick around. You almost wanted to lose that game so Billy Napier wouldn't stick around. They could go fire him and get somebody else. But, I mean, give credit to Napier the last couple seasons, right when it seems like he's about to get fired or he's on the hot seat, he goes out and wins a game he shouldn't win. Notre Dame, Boise State, that game went about as expected. Louisville, Virginia. I thought Virginia was going to have a hangover and not bounce back, and they were going to lose against Louisville. But credit Virginia, especially that defense. That defense looked really good. They made Miller Moss look uncomfortable for most of that game. Then they got into Louisville got it into overtime, and then Virginia. And then I thought, okay, Louisville got in overtime. Certainly Virginia's going to fall apart. Nope. They held Louisville to a field goal, and they drove right down and scored, I think, in 3 or 4 plays. And Virginia wins the game. And like I said, they're number 1 in the ACC right now. Who would have thought? But I'm giving credit to Virginia now. That's a legitimate team. Washington, Maryland, that game went about as expected. Mike Locksley, has the worst record after the month of, I think it's September or October, and all of college football. It's you should look it up. It's pretty interesting. Nebraska, that was it. Went about as expected. Texas Tech, they won their game. Miami, Florida State. I mean, Miami, man. I think I still somewhat disagree with Mitchell about them being the best team in the country. I think they're definitely top 3, undoubtedly. I think Oregon might be the best team in the country, but I think it's getting harder and harder to argue that, though. I mean, Mitchell, give you credit. It's getting harder and harder to argue that point. Miami looks really good. Carson Beck, he played very well. They shut down Florida State at their house, at their place. They shut them down. And Florida State made it a game at the end, tried to make a comeback, and they made it a 1-possession game. But, man. Oh, no, it wasn't Mike Locksley. It's actually Cristobal. Let me look this up real quick. Mario Cristobal's record in the month of November. Yes, Mario Cristobal's record in November since taking the Miami job is 4-8. 4-8. It wasn't Locksley that I was thinking of when I said that stat. It was actually Cristobal. So Cristobal has a history of, man, they start off great. What I'm waiting to see is how are they going to play in November? Those last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Cristobal coach teams always have real issues at the end of the season. I don't know why that is. Cristobal's 4-8 in November, and I think he's 5-10 or something in the last few weeks of October into November. So right around those last week or two, that last week of October into November is when Cristobal teams start struggling. So we'll see what happens. But right now, that's a really good football team. Texas A&M blew out Mississippi State. Alabama, Vandy, big win. I mean, absolutely big win for them. Diego Pavia. I like Diego Pavia, and for the first half, it looked like, okay, Vanderbilt is a legit team. They could potentially pull this off again, but then the second half, Vandy couldn't score anything. Diego Pavia was actually kind of the reason they lost that game, was making some bad mistakes. Very rarely does talking the amount of smack that Diego Pavia did against a good team like Alabama, very rarely does that ever work out. It worked for Tommy Castellanos at the beginning of the year, give him credit. But Diego Pavia, and then now he's appealing for a 7th year. Like, Diego, just move on. Do you really need a 7th year of college football? I like you. I like Diego Pavia. But now he's appealing for a 7th year. It's at some point, dude, you got to move on with your life and get out of college. Come on, man. But I still think that Vanderbilt team is very good. I still think they could beat any team in the SEC. I mean, That doesn't mean they will. I mean, I think they're good enough to compete and to even beat any team in the SEC right now. But Alabama, credit to them. Last year off a big win off Georgia, they came out and flopped the next week against Vandy. They didn't do that this year, and they got a big win at home. So credit to them. And then the last game I want to talk about, obviously, is Penn State UCLA. I mean, Penn State was down 20 at halftime against UCLA, winless UCLA. Well, previously winless UCLA. And dude, what a great story. But before I get into Penn State, what a great story for UCLA. They fired their head coach. They have an interim head coach. And then Jerry Neuheisel, the son of Rick Neuheisel, who works for, I think it's CBS Sports, maybe Fox Sports. He covers the college football. He's on the panel there. His son, Jerry Neuheisel, former UCLA quarterback, was carried off the field after their win in 2011, I think it was, against Texas. But he's calling plays. He was just thrown into it. He even said in the post-game press conference that he found out 2 days before the game that he was calling plays. They had 2 days of practice to install what he wanted to run on offense. And they went out and they steamrolled Penn State. Scored 42 on a Penn State defense. And, dude, honestly, the story of Jerry Neuheisel, I mean, he looks like a Marvel supervillain. He looks like Joffrey on Game of Thrones. But, dude, good for him, man. I mean, what a great story. And I think I hope Jerry Neuheisel ends up becoming the head coach at UCLA, because you can tell he loves that school. He loves that place. And he was so passionate. And for them to win that game was just incredible. But now let's go to Penn State. What are we doing? James Franklin. I've said many times on the show that James Franklin is just Mark Richt reincarnated. But I think he gets a downgrade. I think James Franklin is a poor man's Mark Richt. He's dollar store Mark Richt. Because you know what? Mark Richt had trouble winning big games. But Mark Richt very rarely ever lost to teams that were worse than his. He very rarely ever lost games he should not have lost. Mark Richt very often lost to teams that were, he very often lost games that he was an underdog in. If he was expected to lose the game, a lot of times he lost the game. Not a lot of times did we win those big games where we were like slight underdogs going into big games. But when we were favored, Mark Richt barely ever lost those games. I can't even remember one time off the top. I'm sure it happened, but I can't remember a time off the top of my head that we lost a game we shouldn't have lost. But James Franklin, I mean, how many whiteouts have they lost? When's the last time Penn State won a big game? They beat Boise State in the playoff last year. Whoop-de-doo. You should beat them. But when's the last time they won a big game? Penn State has so much talent on this roster. There is no excuse for what we're seeing. And then James Franklin goes out after the game and starts making the most ridiculous, the most Charmin soft excuses I've ever heard for losing a game. He said, well, the travel, and we were just so heartbroken after the loss to Oregon, and then he said, and everything else. People are like, what everything else? Well, just everything else. We just weren't prepared to win this game. We just weren't prepared for this game. Brother, that's on you. That's on you. It's time to have a real conversation. We had a real conversation about Sarkisian earlier. It's time to have a real conversation about James Franklin as the head coach at Penn State. I mean, James Franklin is the kind of coach where he's good enough to get you 9-10 wins every year. You'll make the playoff every year, but you're never going to win anything. You're never going to win anything of importance. They're never going to win a Big Ten title. They're never going to win. They're never going to go deep into the playoffs. I mean, now that there's 12 teams and are eventually going to be 14 teams, they might win the first round, but they're never going to go deep into the playoffs. They're never going to do anything of significance because James Franklin, the one constant that's been there for the last 10 years, and Penn State's had some really, really talented teams over the last 10, 15 years. What's been the one constant? James Franklin. You know, a lot of people are saying, well, who are you going to go get? I mean, because at least we're winning 10 games every year. Well, sometimes you have to take that risk if you want to. I mean, if you're okay with winning 9, 10 games a year and that's good enough for you, fine, stick with them. Fine. Maybe one year y'all will get lucky and they'll win. Maybe. But, may I remind you that Georgia had to take a very similar risk. Everybody was saying, no, Georgia can't fire Mark Richt because, who are you going to go out and get that's better? You're risking, you could be you're taking a huge risk sacrificing almost a guaranteed 9-10 wins a season to go for an unknown guy like Kirby Smart. We don't know what we're getting out of him. And you know what? It was a huge risk. At the day that we fired Mark Richt and hired Kirby Smart, I was scared to death as a Georgia fan. I was sick to my stomach because I loved Mark Richt. I didn't know what we were getting. I thought it was a huge risk, but sometimes you have to take the risk, and it worked out for us. It doesn't work out for everybody, but at some point you've got to take that risk. You've got to pull the trigger. You've got to go a different direction, man. I think James Franklin's days at Penn State are numbered. You cannot. Okay, first off, you lost another whiteout game, which who knows how many in a row they've lost. The whiteout game is not even special anymore because they lose it every year. And then you go out and you lose to arguably one of the worst Power 4 teams in the country. And you didn't just lose. You were down by 20 at halftime, gave up 42 points to one of the sorriest offenses I've seen this year. That team quit. Penn State quit after the Oregon loss. I think they were so demoralized they quit on the season already. It's going to be interesting to see what they do this week against Northwestern. I don't think they necessarily lose that game, but I'll be interested to see how they come back and play. Because I thought they came out and used. I thought they thought it was going to be a helmet game. They thought they were just going to roll their helmets out there. They were going to win this game, whatever. Don't really care because of the heartbreaker against Oregon, and they got punched in the mouth and lost. It's time for James Franklin to look in the mirror. It's time for Penn State to look in the mirror and say, look, to those people that say, who are you going to go get? I think Penn State can get anybody they want. That's a big – that's a big-time school. That's a big-time job. I think a lot of coaches would jump on the opportunity to go to Penn State. But we have gone a little bit too long. I am a certified yapper. I talk a little bit too much, especially on shows when I'm by myself. I find myself talking way too much. So let's get into this week's games. Obviously, I'm going to go over my picks, and then I'm going to give Mitchell and Cody's picks. They both submitted their picks to me. First game of the week. Well, let's give a points update first. Cody won the week again last week. I think he got 15 points. He's been on a roll lately, and he's finally caught me. Me and him both are tied with 76 points each, and Mitchell bringing up the rear at 65 points. Mitchell has been slowly falling behind every week. He's trying to have a big week this week to try to get back into it. But first game of the week, Ohio State at Illinois. Preseason, there were a lot of people that were saying that this was potentially a loss for Ohio State. And I was one of those people. I thought that, Ohio State, this was going to be a trap game for them. Illinois is a much improved team, especially after their Duke win. I was like, man, watch out Ohio State for that game at Illinois. But honestly, now I don't think Ohio State's worried about that game that much. I don't think I'm worried about Ohio State losing this game that much. Give me Ohio State comfortable. The line right now is 14.5, and I think Vegas probably knows something that we don't. So I'm going to trust that line, and I'm going to trust this Ohio State football team. Their offense is not as explosive as it has been in years past, but that defense is really, really good. And I think they're going to stop Luke Altmaier, and I think this game is never really in question. I think Illinois may score like on the first drive of the game, maybe punch them in the mouth. But very quickly, I think Ohio State catches up, and the game's never really in question. Give me Ohio State to win this game comfortable. Mitchell is also going to go the same route, Ohio State comfortable. And then Cody is going to – all three of us have Ohio State winning this game comfortably. All right, next one. This is a really interesting game. I think could be one of the best games of the week. Alabama going on the road to play Missouri. Again, this Missouri team, nobody's talking about them. They're silently 5-0. They look really good. I mean, they look like a solid team. Now, this is going to be the best team they've played by far. So this is going to be a really, really interesting matchup. And I was really tempted to pick Missouri because I think they've got a really good team. And I think this is going to be a nail biter the whole way through. I think it's going to be a close game, but I do think Alabama's going to pull it out. Something about big-time games Caleb DeBoer has his team ready for. If you look, since he's taken over in Alabama, which has only been a year and a half, the games where they struggle in and lose are games against teams where everybody thinks it's going to be an easy win. Or they think it's going to be just a helmet game. Just roll your helmet out there and you're winning this game. It's an unranked opponent or a team that everybody thinks you're going to handle. But it's the games against like ranked opponents. It's the games where people think, no, Alabama might lose this game. He always seems to have his teams ready for. I think Alabama wins this game, but it'll be a close one. Mitchell is actually, not surprisingly, picking against Alabama. He's picking Missouri to win a close game at home. And Cody is going to go with me and pick Alabama close. Would love to have Mitchell here to talk about that. You know, he's a big-time Bama hater. I'd love to hear what he has to say about this game. Next one, one of my favorite rivalry games in college football, the Red River Shootout. Oklahoma, Texas. Now, this game, just in the last 12 hours, 24 hours maybe, the narrative has really shifted on this game because 24 hours ago, it was pretty much John Mateer was not playing. He still is recovering. It was going to be Michael Hawkins versus Arch Manning. Mid versus mid. And it was going to be an interesting game. But now Pete Thamel, as of a little over an hour ago, reporting that John Mateer is now listed as probable to start on Saturday. He reported earlier this afternoon that he was going to try and play, but then he got upgraded to probable about an hour ago. So that's going to be really interesting. Obviously, Mateer, I think even a hurt Mateer is still way better than Arch Manning, what I've seen from him this year. I know some people think that Texas is going to wake up this week because they kind of have to have this one. I don't think it matters. Give me Oklahoma comfortable. I've not been impressed with this Texas team. I don't think offensively they're any good. I think potentially we could see Texas go to the backup quarterback, whoever that is. We might see it here in this game. If Arch Manning continues to struggle, that defense hasn't been nearly as good as we thought it would be. Give me Oklahoma to win this game comfortable. Mitchell has Oklahoma winning this game as well, but he has them winning it close. And then I believe Cody also has Oklahoma. Yes, Oklahoma close in this one. John Mateer, he's definitely not going to be 100%. And even if he goes out there and you can tell he's not 100%, I still think a hurt Mateer at 50% is still better than Arch Manning at 100%. I believe that. I don't think Arch Manning is very good. He's having a really bad year. Give me the next game, Nebraska at Maryland. We featured Nebraska several times on this show. Maryland looked pretty good last week. They were up 20-0 on Washington and then blew it, lost 24-20. I think they gave up 24 points all in like the late third quarter, fourth quarter, and blew that game. Very, very stereotypical of a Mike Locksley team, not able to finish a game, not able to finish a season. but Malik Washington is a legit quarterback. But they're hosting Nebraska this week, and I think Nebraska handles them as well. Give me Nebraska comfortable. Again, another one of those games I don't think is ever going to be in question. I think Nebraska's playing well. These are not the kind of games that Matt Rhule loses. Again, has a very good record against teams that are not as talented and are underdogs. So I think Matt Rhule comes out and wins this game. And Dylan Raiola having a good year. As much as I think he's kind of weird for as much as he impersonates Patrick Mahomes, he's having a great year. And Mitchell's going to go Nebraska close, and Cody's going to go Nebraska close. So not a lot of difference so far. Only one different winner picked in the first 4 games. I'd like to point out in these 4 games, the road team, I've picked the road team to win in all. Well, I guess Oklahoma, Texas is technically neutral site, but I've picked the road team to win in 3 out of the first 4 games. Let's go Michigan traveling to Southern California to play the Trojans. This is going to be an interesting game. Lincoln Riley's teams typically struggle with very physical, run-heavy teams. And because of that, I was very tempted to pick Michigan. But analyzing the stats, analyzing both of these teams, I think I don't know. I think USC's having a quietly good year. And I think that's where Lincoln Riley really needs to be and really is going to thrive. When he's got all the hype, when USC is all hyped up as, they're going to be really good, they never do well. But this year, nobody's talking about this USC team. And I think Lincoln Riley and the USC team like it that way. Jaden Maeva, he has the best QBR in the nation. I think it's like he's got like a 95 QBR. So he's playing really well, and I think he's going to be the reason they win this game. Give me USC close to beat Michigan. I like Michigan, but I still think Michigan is having too much trouble throwing the football. I think if USC can stop the run and force Bryce Underwood to win the game, I don't think they're going to be able to because they still are struggling to really throw the ball consistently. Give me USC close. Mitchell's going to go the other way here, and he's going to go Michigan close. And then Cody is going to go Michigan comfortable. Probably the same. Mitchell, probably knowing him, has the same reasoning I do. Lincoln Riley typically loses these kind of games, but I think he gets off the schneid here. Next game, South Carolina at LSU. South Carolina is 3-2 on the year. It's not been what they wanted it to be. There's a lot of high expectations for this team in Lenore Sellers. And South Carolina, starting this Saturday, begins a stretch of 5 consecutive games against ranked opponents. Them and Florida probably have the 2 most brutal stretches of games out there. And that's not good for South Carolina because I think they probably will lose all 5 of those games. I think if they can win 2 out of those 5, that's a win for South Carolina. And with that being said, I've got LSU winning this game. And I think LSU wins this game big. I think LSU comes out mad. I think they come out ticked off the way they played against Ole Miss, the way they got embarrassed. Brian Kelly doesn't typically lose 2 games in a row. Brian Kelly led teams when they lose a game, typically come out and play much better the following week. It's a home game. It's a night game at LSU in Death Valley. So give me LSU, and I think LSU finally gets their offense rolling a little bit. Nussmeier, I think he's still hurt, but I think we see a little bit better offense. That they come out and they just play angry. I think they force a couple of turnovers. LSU wins this game big over South Carolina. Mitchell is going to go LSU comfortable. If I can type. And then Cody is going to go LSU close. So all of us have LSU, but all 3 of us have different margins of victory for that game. Next game, Georgia-Auburn. And, of course, I want to talk about this game a little bit. I think I mentioned this last week. I don't think that this Georgia team, at least not yet, I don't think that this Georgia team is elite. I really don't. But then again, I don't think that there are any. And if there are, very few elite, really elite teams in college football with the way the talent has been spread out in NIL, transfer portal, things like that. I don't think there is really truly an elite team, so to speak. I think the defense is struggling a lot. Saw some good things in them last week, but it was Kentucky. The offense is still playing great. Offense has played great, I think, all season. They've not been the issue. Where we've been able to run the football better this year than we have in the last 3 or 4 years. I'm happy about that. This game makes me really nervous. It's a night game at Jordan-Hare. We know, if you know anything about SEC football, you know night games at Jordan-Hare, especially against top-ranked opponents, are scary for the opponent. Auburn has some weird voodoo magic in that place in night games where they come out and they play like world beaters. I mean, they almost beat us 2 years ago in Jordan-Hare. It wasn't a night game, but at least I don't think it was a night game. They almost beat us there 2 years ago. They're honoring Cam Newton retiring his number. They're coming off 2 heartbreaking losses. They barely lost to Texas A&M 2 weeks ago, and their offense was horrible. I think they gave up 6 or 7 sacks against Texas A&M. Their offense was horrible, and they only lost by 6. This is going to be the best defense Georgia plays all year. Our offense has been the bright spot of our team. We still have no pass rush, even against Kentucky. I think we got 1 or 2 sacks. We got a few more quarterback pressures than we have been getting, but I'm still not impressed with the pass rush. This game scares me. I do think that we could potentially lose this game, and I'm scared that we might. But I'm going to go with my heart. I'm going to pick Georgia to win this game, but I think Georgia wins close. I think this is a close game all throughout. I think Auburn gives us their best shot, but Georgia hangs on and wins the game. We can't get off to a slow start like we have been. The Kentucky game is the first time in 8 games against Power 4 teams we went into halftime with a lead. We have to do that again. We cannot get off to another slow start because this Auburn defense is really good. And while we're on the subject, I want to talk a little bit about Gunnar Stockton. Somebody did a side-by-side comparison of Gunnar Stockton and Carson Beck. Both Gunnar Stockton and Carson Beck have played 3 Power 4 teams each. And both of them have played a ranked home game against a Power 4 opponent, a ranked road game against a Power 4 opponent, and a non-ranked home game against a Power 4 opponent. Gunnar Stockton is 51 of 74, 630 passing yards, 68.9% completion percentage, 4 touchdowns to 1 pick, 152.2 passer rating, 88.7 QBR, second highest QBR in the nation. Carson Beck, 57 of 87, 606 passing yards, 65.5% completion percentage, 6 touchdowns to 1 interception, 146.3 passer rating, 75.1 QBR. Stockton's resume is a little bit better there. And again, I'm not taking a dig at Carson Beck. That was just a very, very interesting comparison there. And credit to Carson Beck, second highest QBR Gunnar Stockton, second highest QBR in the nation right now behind Jaden Maeva of USC. Shouldn't be doubting Gunnar Stockton. And I have no doubts about Gunnar Stockton's ability against Auburn. If we lose this game, it won't be because of Gunnar Stockton, I don't think. I think Auburn is going to hone in on the run. They're going to try to focus their attention on stopping the run. And that means we're going to have to throw the ball effectively, which I think we can. I don't doubt that. But I think they're going to force Gunnar Stockton to stay in the pocket and win the game with his arm. And I think he can do that. What worries me is the defense, man. The only position group on defense I've been impressed with is the linebackers. The D-line, not been impressed with their ability to get pressure. Now, we've been able to stop the run really well, and that's about all Auburn can do right now. Jackson Arnold cannot throw the ball. I've been hearing rumors that Jackson Arnold's been benched and that Deuce Robinson may get the start, which that's another reason that scares me, because Georgia, for some reason, has trouble when it comes to playing against quarterbacks they have no tape on. And there's rumors that they're going to start Deuce. Is it Deuce Robinson? It's Deuce something, Deuce Knight, something like that. Whoever their backup quarterback is. So that makes me really nervous. But I'm going to go Georgia close to win this game. Before the Alabama game this year, I went into every Georgia game expecting to win. I don't think it's like that anymore. I think we've gotten to the point where, and I don't think anybody really can just expect to win every game, because how evened out the playing field is, how different college football is now. You can lose any given Saturday. So, game makes me nervous, but I think Georgia wins the game. And I spent a long time talking about Georgia, and I could talk about them some more, but I'm not going to. Mitchell's got Georgia winning comfortable. Man, I hope we win that game comfortable. And then Cody's got UGA close. Scares me that nobody's picking Auburn on this panel. Next one, BYU at Arizona. Already talked about how impressive BYU has been. Arizona has been having a quietly pretty good year as well. Don't have a ton to say about this game. Give me BYU close. I think Arizona can keep it close, but BYU wins the game. Mitchell's going to go BYU comfy. Comfortable win for them. And then Cody is going to go BYU close. Next, we've got Arizona State at Utah, another interesting Big 12 matchup. Two teams that only have one loss in the conference and one loss overall. Going to be a good game, but I think Utah and Devin Dampier, I think they win this game comfortable. I like this Arizona State team. I think they're a good, solid team, but I think Devin Dampier, it's at home for Utah. I think they make enough plays, and I think they win the game comfortably. Mitchell's going to go Arizona State close. And Cody is going to go Arizona State comfortable. So a chance there for me to pick up some points on both of them. And then the game of the week, Indiana, number 7 Indiana on the road at number 3 Oregon. Who would have thought that this would be a top 10 matchup just a couple of years ago? But I think this is going to be a fantastic game. Like I said, I love Curt Cignetti. I think he's a legitimate coach, got this team moving in the right direction. I like Fernando Mendoza. This is a road game, though. I think that's where Indiana kind of has the disadvantage here a little bit. So I've got Oregon winning the game, but I think it's close. I think Indiana can keep the game close the whole way through. I think it'll be a competitive game. I think Indiana may have a lead early in this game. Oregon then will take the lead maybe around halftime, and they'll never lose the lead again, but Indiana will never fall too far behind. Just give me a close game. Oregon wins it. I think Oregon is the best team in the country. Oregon wins the game close. And then Mitchell also has Oregon to win the game close as well. And Cody has Oregon winning comfortable. Now listen, when everybody doubts Curt Cignetti, that's when he has his best coaching performance. So the fact that most people are picking Oregon to win this game, don't be shocked if Indiana wins. I mean, that's when he does his best coaching job. So let's get into our super dogs and we'll wrap it up for the night. Cody is picking Virginia Tech to cover the 14.5 spread against his beloved Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. He is a diehard fan when he's picking a team to cover against his team in the spread. Must not have a lot of confidence after that Wake Forest game. But Mitchell's going to go with NC State to cover the 22.5 against Notre Dame. We all know Mitchell's hatred towards Notre Dame. That was one that I looked at, but I think NC State is like 1-4 against the spread this year. So that was a game that I was not going to touch. I've been between two games for my super dog. I've been between Northwestern covering against Penn State or New Mexico covering against Boise State. I think I'm going to go New Mexico to covering against Boise State because I still think there's a chance that Penn State comes out, hears all the noise, hears how, we just saw it with Florida when everybody's dogging on their head coach. They come out and they play well for him. And I think it's a home game for Penn State. So I think I'm going to stay away from that game, even though I think it's actually not a bad bet. Northwestern to cover 21.5. But I'm going to take New Mexico to cover against Boise State, 16.5 point spread. I like that one a little bit better. But that's the show for this week. Can't believe that I sat on here and talked for 66 straight minutes. But like I said, I'm a yapper. When I get talking about something I like, I can talk for a long time. But thank you to those that popped in and out throughout the night. I know the show is a little bit later tonight, but thank you guys for watching. And hopefully we'll have Mitchell and Cody back on the show next week. And enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your weekend of college football. Sit back, relax, watch some great games, and go Dogs. And have a great rest of your night. Peace.